Hi everyone and welcome back to WARNO. This is the DAVOUT patch, or Milestone, and today we're doing some testing with units. Many thanks to Gregory who has helped me do this testing again today. For those who are new to the channel, I do one of these every major patch or when they change something major, just so we can see what the new units are like or what those changed units are like. So here we'll be taking a look first at some of the bombers. Here you can see we've got the Tornado IDS MW1, which is the cluster bomblet jet. I can zoom right in on it and we can have a little look. There's the cluster bomblet dropper underneath it. And I'm going to be hitting a series of infantry here that Gregory has kindly put in the forest, in a building, and on the road. And we just want to see how much damage this does. Now, what I want to stress is you will see later in the video that HE explosions don't do as much damage as you would expect, and this drops HE bomblets. I originally thought it was going to be dropping proper cluster bomblets, but it actually drops HE bomblets. So I'll just get us round a bit so we can see this drop. I've just got it on 50% speed. Obviously I'll adjust the speed as we go through. It's hard to see them, but those bomblets are there. And that was an immense amount of damage. I mean, that killed all of those infantry there with very little effort. In fact, if you look at the spread pattern there, it's only covering maybe half of that building. So killing the infantry in there was quite impressive and unexpected. Let's move on to the next. So this second test is a pure curiosity where we're going to test the MW1 against these units here. This is a T-55, T-72 and a single armor supply vehicle. So it has one armor across the board, purely to see how much damage these HE bomblets do to armor. Has successfully killed the one armor vehicle, but has not done any damage to the tanks. So, sort of as expected, very little bombs, very good against infantry, not so good against a properly armored vehicle like a tank. Now for these next couple of tests, we want to test anti-tank, so anti-tank missiles and cluster munitions from jets against some T-72s. Here we have the F4F HE. And what we're trying to test here is just in terms of their damage output, whether the missiles miss very often compared to the bombs. So, of that, one of those missiles hit, the other one missed. The initial one missed on that run. Now, that F4F actually has 4 missiles in total, so could technically, assuming it hasn't been destroyed by anti-air, do another run at that tank. So, just to test that damage output, I brought in a Tornado IDS cluster, which has its 5 Rockeye 2 bombs. And the intention here was mostly to hit this T-72 at the other side. Pretty straight line in terms of its spread for that bomber. And it did about the same amount of damage as a single missile from the other jet. So the other jet has Mavericks. So it did the same amount of damage as a single missile. The difference here is that's all 5 bombs gone. It doesn't get to fire again. So, depending on your point of view, you're better off bringing in the Mavericks, because if one of those missiles hits, you've still got a chance to come by and do another pass. And this is just another IDS cluster coming in to finish the job. Checking the spread pattern again. Once again, it's that straight line and one has fallen off to the side. But, you know, same effect. Straight line, pretty much. So for this test we have the F4F HE bomber, which is basically a carpet bomber with 12 bombs. I'm going to be dropping it in this town. Now watch very closely and I will explain something when these bombs drop. I'm going to pause it there and I'm going to turn us around. You see the spread pattern here, it's actually pretty tight. You sort of get 6 bombs and 6 bombs in 2 lines next to each other, which would be very effective if they had hit their target. What we discovered is where you target, so the little circle, the red circle that will appear is where you target. I targeted basically here on this road, thinking that that would be either the center of the bombs or this end. Actually, it's the top end where the bombs finish. So if I continue, we actually bring in a second jet and I target this road instead, and you can see the difference. But this was a big surprise. That was very unexpected. You can see those bombs. Very nice straight lines. So here we go. That second bomber coming in now. As I say, targeted at this road here, where my mouse pointer is. And you'll see the difference in the spread and how far it's moved forward. Again, the spread ends at that road, or a little bit before. So if you're aiming the F4F HE, you need to be aiming past your target, because that still is, looking at it now, look at where the final bombs landed. Nowhere near this building, so actually you'd need to be sort of aiming in the middle of this row of houses to be getting the correct effect. That was a big surprise of all of the things we tested. So for this test we have the Tornado IDS HE with 3 450 kilogram bombs aimed at these guys here. And we have destroyed 2 buildings, but done 0 damage to any of the infantry in there. So if you're wanting to clear buildings with a bomber, you need the WM1. You need the cluster bomblets that do HE bomblets, basically, because they didn't even scratch those infantry. And this is something that is now recurrent in the game. The buildings provide a significant 90% if you hover over a building. It says it's like 90%. I can't do it in a replay, I don't think. But I think it's 90% against HE, which is obviously very significant. So now on the screen we have what was going to be one of the highlights of this test for me. I was so looking forward to seeing a flame tank in action. These things are amazing in Wargame Red Dragon. Not so good in Steel Division 2, I understand. And, well, my understanding is this is firing like it does in Steel Division 2. But can I just highlight those infantry in that building? I mean, they're not taking any damage at all from that flame tank. It's not leaving napalm on the ground. It's not doing immediate damage. This is extremely disappointing. We're going to do a few more tests, so I will let it run. But needless to say, the building certainly going to be taking damage, but the infantry, not a scratch on them. Even though that building appears to be on fire. I can zoom around, there you go. Building is indeed burning. Or looks to be, at least. Now this was another little side bit of this test, that we put down some flames. And there was that building gone, so the building was destroyed by the flames. Infantry still taking no damage. Now, out of pure curiosity, I'm going to move these infantry into this flaming area. Now, for me, this should be dropping down napalm, causing a load of flames, and therefore, if you run into that area, you should take damage, you should become afraid, something should happen. But here, nothing happens. In Wargame, if you run through a load of flames, you take damage. These guys don't take any damage. The guy's still in the building, getting shot at again. Or the ruins of the building, I should say, taking no damage. These guys, I'm running in and out of those flames, and they have taken 0 damage. The cohesion is still high. These guys now taking a bit of damage from a direct hit from that flamethrower. That is a manual target. I must stress this. This is Grigory manually targeting. So, manually targeting the flamer onto the infantry does do a little bit of damage, but not a significant amount. Certainly less than we would have expected. And this has 20 shots in total from that flame cannon. 1 infantry killed. No infantry killed because it obviously misses. But you have to manually target the ground to do this. It will not utilize its flame cannon on infantry that you tell it to target without it being manual. So, firstly, it's pretty broken. And secondly, the flamethrower is horrendous. So, RPOs, things like that, the rocket-propelled flame infantry, you know, that are doing damage with basically an RPG with a flame round, very good. This tank with a flamethrower, very bad. Don't even bother putting it in your deck. Take something else. It is not worth it right now. It needs adjusting. So what we're testing now against these infantry is a rocket attack plane, the MiG-21 BIS. This has 120mm rockets and 57mm rockets. It already did 1 pass, and there's its second pass. It has destroyed the building on the second pass. Now, what I want to point out about this plane, if I can zoom out and grab it, there we go. Now, this plane has 10 122mm rockets and 32 57mm rockets. In Wargame, when a rocket plane comes in and fires its payload, it fires everything at once at the target it's going towards. This is firing 5 rockets at a time. So it's firing 522mm and 5 57mm. And it continues to fire 5 at a time. And then tries to do another pass. This is terrible. It's done minimal damage to the infantry after 3 passes. There is no way in hell that plane wouldn't have been killed by anti-air by now. That's 3 times it would have flown over the enemy anti-air defenses. So that's just completely inefficient. That needs adjusting. It should be firing all of its rockets in 1 pass. At the very least, half of all its rockets in 1 pass. You know, as it is, it's pretty useless. We're going to do the same now with the guys in the forest next. So, against a group in a forest that aren't protected by a building, incredibly increased amounts of damage. I mean, that squad is immediately down to 2 and is routed. It was a squad of 9 remaining troops and is now remaining just 2. So for this next test, something we haven't tested in a little while is the Su-22M4 napalm. We've not tested the napalm bombs in a while, so I've just got some infantry in buildings here and a couple of TZP fucks that I left there just in case they get hit by it to see if they do any damage. Payload of 4 bombs. Absolutely minced that building and the squad that were in it at the front. Destroyed the building for these ones at the back, but has not done them any damage. Now, in fairness, the drop pattern for those bombs, to me, it didn't really hit that building full on. So, perhaps that's why those guys survived in this situation. Perhaps targeting a little bit further back might have helped. Not terrible. Still not the best things in the world, as they don't sort of leave enough fire behind that does a lot of damage. Now, while we were setting up for a couple of other tests, we decided to test out seed planes. Now, here we have the Su-22M4P, the new seed plane for the Soviets. And the reason we wanted to test this was to see if their missiles miss. In Wargame Red Dragon, I had convinced myself that I had never actually seen a seed missile miss a target. Grigory was pretty certain he had seen them miss, so we decided to put that to the test here and see what it was like in WARNO. Our testing was quite varied in its results, and veterancy equally didn't seem to make as much of a difference as we had expected. You can see here another one coming in. I have turned on this single Roland, so its weapons are enabled. This is just a trained Su-22. First missile missed, second missile from that seed plane hit and destroyed the target. Now, our thought was that if you bring in a ranked up one, then it's going to have more chance of hitting the target. As these tests continued, and we did do quite a few of them over the next little while, so I'll speed this up, you will actually see that unexpectedly the higher ranked ones also miss. So that's a veteran one, and again you had a miss and a hit. You can see the other missile there, and here's another veteran one. That one both hit. But just to point out that that was a veteran that came in, first missile missed, second missile hit. You can see the hole in the ground. So what we discovered from testing this, and we do a little bit of continued testing with those later on, but the point is this: you don't need to bring in ranked up ones because they equally have a chance to miss. So you might as well bring in more of the trained ones. So just for something a little different, we decided to test the M48 versus a T55A. Now the M48 we expected to be absolutely useless. Its stats pretty bad: 13 penetration, 5 front armor, 39% accuracy. Okay, that's its standard. This is actually ranked up slightly versus the T55A, which has 7 front armor, 14 penetration, 30% accuracy, but again vetted up, so we'll have 15% on top of that. Now this actually took a fire at the wrong tank at first. They're now firing at each other. As you can see, accuracy isn't great. That one actually missed the M48. M48 still missing. T55 still missing. Finally, the M48 gets a shot on the T55, and bang, second shot kills it. So the M48, surprisingly, did miraculously well there. And then out of curiosity, we just did the same again to see if that was a repeatable incident. I'd also note that in terms of range, they're actually the same. So we just got them near each other and then opened fire. So miss for the T55, direct hit for the M48, sorry. And again, second shot was a hit, and the M48 has taken 0 damage again. And at this point, I was starting to wonder myself if it had some kind of miraculous shield that was defending it against enemy tank fire. So I asked Grigory to roll in this very badly damaged T72, just so we could have a quick look. So there we go. The T72 is engaging, and has actually hit it and done some damage. So the M48 is not impervious to enemy tank fire, though it's taking a few shots to kill it. It's still missing. It's not moving, and it's still missing. This T72 is missing. So that took 5 shots. 3 of those shots missed, 2 hit. That's really, really surprising. So the M48, not as bad as expected, is the takeaway from that. So now at this stage of the video, we just thought we'd do a couple of artillery tests. So we've got some Lars 2s firing at these 2 T72s here. And we're going to have these M110A2Gs firing at the town up here. Aimed generally on these units. Now, the Lars fires pretty slowly, and it's sort of a creeping barrage once again from left to right, and honestly, it's so easy to just avoid these incoming shots. The infantry, however, will have a much harder time of it, taking some damage from these very large shells, but that's an entire payload. The M110 only fires 2 shots each in one salvo. So that was all 4 shells. The Lars is still firing its excessive amount of rockets, but as you can see here, doing minimal damage still to these T-72s, and there is no way that if this was a real game, Grigory wouldn't have moved to T-72s. And in fact, we tested that later as I randomly fired at him towards the end of our testing, and he just rolled them out the way multiple times. So they are genuinely just not up to scratch. If they had a more random fire pattern, so they weren't definitely firing from left to right, then that would help. But at the moment, they're just really easy to avoid. Firing again with the M110s, and that's just purely to see if we can do any more damage to these guys. Building destroyed there, and those guys took a bit of damage. The other building still standing, and infantry with minimal damage. That's another building destroyed. Those guys down to 1 unit now. Those guys 2 damage now. Building still standing though. Yeah, disappointing against the buildings. So again, if you're wanting to kill infantry and buildings, right now it appears to be, for some reason, the cluster bomblets are most effective from the Tornado IDS MW1. So this next test was a bit of a curiosity. If you'll remember a couple of patches ago, the anti-air guns, the Spag guns, the Shilka and the like, and the Pivads did an incredible amount of damage to aircraft. The bullets tracked the aircraft across the map. They didn't miss, they just ripped aircraft to shreds. So we just thought we'd do a little test here with this Shilka to see if they're still as accurate as they once were. Bearing in mind that this is a rank 2 Shilka, so veteran. This is slowed down obviously just for effect, so we can see the shots firing. You'll notice firstly that the shots no longer track the aircraft perfectly. You will notice there are some little shots that seem to head towards the aircraft still, but these bigger ones do not track the target anymore, and the aircraft is not miles away still taking damage. So it is the case that Spag is not as good as it was. They have corrected it. It does now miss and will not track its target all the way across the other side of the map. So just something to bear in mind when you're considering which anti-aircraft units to bring in. Now, we also did a large amount of infantry testing. These Pioneer Flam, or the Handflammpatrone guys, who basically have a flame shotgun, are pretty darn good at close range. Again, much like the RPOs and the Flash, they have a significant damage output at close and near close range. These have a total distance of 530 meters, and they will do a lot of damage to enemy infantry at that range. Now, I'm going to skip ahead slightly because I want to demonstrate 2 other things. Firstly, we did test satchel charges. So we'll just get to that point in this video because otherwise we're just pretty much showing the same stuff. So this is a squad of Pioneers, and this is my squad of Grenadiers. Obviously I realized that they were too far away and we immediately dead. I realized that was a little bit fast, I apologize. Basically, as they ran out of that building, the Pioneers threw a satchel charge at them and killed the remainder of the squad immediately. So with that in mind, we decided we would test that again. So this time I'm going to move these Pioneer armbust into this building here. I'll speed it up while I get there. Now, what you have to bear in mind is satchel charges have a short range of only 175 meters. So they're certainly not the be-all and end-all. So here, immediately they start throwing those satchels. You can see them exploding. They are doing damage. So yes, they're taking losses from the general fire, but they also took a lot of damage from those little explosions from the satchel charges. So satchel charges, pretty darn good close quarters, especially if infantry aren't in buildings. So the buildings will protect infantry to some extent, but if they are out in the open, like when they were running between the buildings, they will be devastated. And I imagine that the same would be in the forest. So if you manage to get a satchel charge squad near the enemy in a forest, you're probably going to decimate the enemy squads. Now the last thing we really wanted to show off were the Pioneer Flam for the Soviets. They have the Flame LPO. And I'm just going to pause it here. I have them selected. Do you see they're firing their assault rifle, they're firing their medium machine gun. They are not firing their flamer. The range on that flamer is 530 meters. The same range as the Handflammpatrone. So why they're not firing at this, we weren't sure. But it appears that they don't fire a flamethrower out of a building into the other building. They had to come out of the building to open fire. And you'll notice they're still not firing with it. Grigory had to play around with them to get them to fire. I've actually turned my infantry off so that they don't fire back and kill his flame squad. But it took a while for us to work out that you can actually get them to fire the flamers if you put them in the same building. So now they're in a building together, they are using their LPO, which does do damage for each shot it takes. But you literally have to be on top of them to do the damage. And it destroyed the building, and that squad's still alive with 2 units. Now they're dead. Do you see how long that took to kill that squad in the building? Now compare that to the Handflammpatrone over here. These guys, the Handflammpatrone, were killing infantry in buildings, no bother, pretty darn quickly. So what the takeaway is, flamethrowers right now in WARNO, the LPO and the flame tank, are pretty bad. You're better off going with other infantry. They need to be changed, because right now they're not great. So on the last test we decided to do was at my request. I wanted to see how good the Armbrust units were. The reason for this was that they have a high rate of fire, 13 penetration, rate of fire 20, that's double most rocket propelled grenades. We weren't sure if this was a RPG type weapon. It does say it's an anti-tank rocket launcher, so it kind of fires like that. And its fire rate, it does do a lot of damage to these T-55s and fires very fast. So the takeaway again from that is that these guys are pretty efficient at killing tanks. Their only issue is they have quite a short range at only 705 meters. But pretty good in a tree line and pretty good in some buildings to stop any vehicles coming into a town. Certainly shouldn't be underestimated. They may not have a significant armor penetration value, but they fire pretty fast and they're reasonably accurate. Accuracy 50% standard, so going to be 60 odd % when it's got the 50% increase. Thanks for watching everyone. As always, please do like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you all soon for some more WARNO.